What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for July 15th, 2024. It's another week of talking to you about something I can't show you. There's another free fly, and Star Citizen wants to be an MMO. Finally. All that and more on today's Week in Review. And as always, if this is your first Week in Review, this is where I take all of the official Star Citizen news each week, put it into one video, and share some of my opinions about it. I also live stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/SaltEMike. Stop by and say hello if you guys haven't yet. And before we get into the video, let me share with you today's sponsor. Thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring today's video. Growing up, I ate cereal every morning, sugar pack cereal, because it was so convenient before school, and I really need that convenience now with my early morning schedule. But I want it higher quality, higher in protein, and yeah, I don't want artificial ingredients. And Magic Spoon has my mornings covered now. It fits a variety of lifestyles. It's high in protein, it's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, wheat-free, and naturally flavored. And while all that's great, it gives me that nostalgia of my childhood. The texture and taste are just right there. Magic Spoon cereal has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, 4 to 5 grams of net carbs in each serving, so you can feel good about what you're eating. Use my code SaltEMike or click the link in the description to try Magic Spoon cereal today and get $5 off. You can also find Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed by a 100% happiness guarantee online. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. So click the link in the description and go to magicspoon.com/SaltEMike for $5 off. Thanks again for supporting the sponsors, as always, but we have a ton to talk about today, so let's jump right into the patch notes. All right, we had 3 patches this week, all Evo Patch for 3.24, and on Tuesday. They are clearly not planning on adding too many changes, as they're just kind of tweaking master modes things, and their goal is to kind of try to get things stable. But they did nail a lot of nasty bugs in the bug fix section, but stability was kind of still a major issue on this one. It was really hard to test anything, on top of the fact that mission progression wasn't really working, so you can only do the entry-level mission. The most notable change is personal hangars are no longer armistice zones, so you can literally carry guns and shoot them in there. So target practice, what I don't know if they count like ships, so if somebody else is in your hangar, can you shoot them and not get a crime stat? I'll have to test that actually this week. Thursday, the notes were not great on this one. You actually had to find out in testing chat basically what was going on. They disabled all the mission progression, and so hauling missions, there was 140 of them. You could see all of them. There was new commodities like silicon, ice, and more, and you had missions that went from 6 SEU all the way up to 4,000 SEU, multi-pickups, multi-drop-offs, everything they've been talking about, basically. The payouts I saw were not great, and yeah, they seem to address it a little bit more on SCL, and we'll have to see with all that. I don't think that there's really a point in discussing that and freaking people out when it's all going to change anyway, probably before you see it. For bugs, the major bug fix, I think, was not cargo related. It was backpack reloading is fixed. A lot of people have been complaining about that. Friday, this is kind of the bigger one. This patch had all of the same issues as the last one, in regards to like cargo missions and hangars and all that stuff, but it was more stable, so it was easier to kind of play with things. The main bug here going on with cargo missions right now is that the initial person who accepts the mission can complete the mission, but nobody else in your party can. So if you're doing multi-drop-offs or multi-pickups, it doesn't really work. They're aware of it. It's an issue. It's going to get fixed, but just letting you guys know kind of the process of Evo and what's been going on before it gets to you. But a really, really important change to cargo timers came in. We had been complaining about them, and they heard it. So now they are doing the timers based off of the size of the box, and they lowered the timers big time. So now it is 15 seconds per box for a 32 SEU container, 12 for 24, 16 SEU is 10 seconds per box, 8 SEU is 6, 4 SEU is 4, 2 SEU is 3, and 1 SEU is 2 seconds per box. So a 1 SEU container filled C2 is only taking 23 minutes, while a 32 SEU container filled C2 is taking 5 minutes. So That is much different, to the point where I don't know if you're actually going to choose anything other than auto-loading, because it's really, really good. There are currently no costs associated with the difference in box sizes for loading. Apparently for unloading there is, but I just assumed they were the same, and that's not how it went. Saw other people testing saying that there were some costs, but they were extremely low. So, just like the cargo missions, all that stuff is subject to change. We know their goal is to make you think, should I manually load or should I auto load? So they're going to try to do that with money, and we'll see what happens. Foundation Festival is here, which is a promotion for their guide system, where you get rewards for using it both as a guide and as a player to be guided. There is going to be a free fly, and there is a free fly going on right now. It started on the 12th. It's going to go until July 31st, and there's a referral reward. It's the Apoa Nox, which is literally the fastest gravlev vehicle in the game, so that's kind of a good reward. The recruits this year, and those are the people that are being guided, can get a P4AR and 2 multi-tool sets, basically, and attachments, things like that, all 3 attachments, and I think you get a pistol as well or something. Yeah, there's a few other things, while guides get a hat for 1 mission, 100 eye paint for 2, and an armor set, and a P8 for if you do 3 successful guide missions. In addition to that, each guide type offers paint and for its career type. So, for example, like salvage guides get a paint for a vulture, and mining guides get a paint for a prospector. And I think you get FPS sets of armor each weekend that you complete 3 sessions. So there's all sorts of things pushing you to go do that. That's really all for the patch notes this week. Yeah, just kind of bummed out that we can't show you stuff, but it is moving along. So fingers crossed next week we can finally play some cargo missions publicly and talk about it and hear your thoughts about them, right? But that's all we got for patch notes, so let's talk about the roadmap update. So this was just silly. They let us know that there will be an update to give an update that there are no updates. I think they've already done this once and they did it again. I think if this is what you have for the roadmap update for the week, you probably should just say that we're not doing one this week like they do with ISC and stuff. But they also mention that this is like a good thing that they don't have any updates. The reason no updates is happening is because the dev team widely underestimated their ability to deliver what was in 323. Now have to deliver 324, which is actually a piece of what 323 should have been, and even that is months late. Of course they're not on track. Of course this is not a good situation. Jake then goes on to explain the same thing he has, unfortunately, for the last 6 months. The squadron transition was hard, and as well as saying that the progress tracker update is coming soon. Again, at this point, I personally could care less. I just focus on the patch that's in front of me right now, which is Evo. Unfortunately, it's still Evo. And hopefully after this one, we focus on 4.0 or 325 or whatever comes next. But don't really get the idea of doing updates like this. I think they just piss the community off more than do any good. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, but I think this was hilarious. Then for video updates, we had both an Inside Star Citizen and Star Citizen Live. Inside Star Citizen was titled Mission Statement, and I was quite surprised to find out that the first topic of discussion was Blockade Runner, since it's not run yet once in Evo Cati. In case you aren't familiar with it, they explain the basics at the start.
Blockade Runner is an event that focuses on cargo hauling and space combat.
The inhabitants of a station ask for aid. The bad guys have blockaded one of these stations, and the citizens there need help to get certain supplies from outside to go back in.
The idea with it is that you would have someone who flies a cargo ship and loads up full of cargo, and then have a bunch of escort ships that help fight them. However, the way they now have to get the cargo means they have to actually go and extract it from pirates who have taken it from the station.
We wanted to make a cargo-based event because a lot of our current events are really heavy on combat. And cargo's been kind of underutilized on the global event scene, and we thought it would be fun to work that into our usual design.
I got to agree with them. Cargo was my favorite part of Xenothread, and it felt underutilized. This event was made to replace Ninetales Lockdown, though, and it's looking very different than when Ninetales Lockdown was. And to help explain that difference, they explain the entire mission flow.
So the flow of Blockade Runner is when you start the mission, you will receive marker points of potential sites where a pirate could be that has stolen cargo from the station that's requesting its return.
A hostile enemy force has attacked one of the LEOs throughout Stanton, and they've stolen a great deal of Zeta Promenade from it. This Zeta Promenide's been shipped out, it's being carried away, and the remainder of the enemy force has stayed behind, surrounding the LEO in a blockade. It's up to players of the verse to chase down these enemy ships that contain the stolen material, defeat them in combat, reclaim the material,
either via the use of distortion weapons to make sure you get every piece of cargo that's on board the ship, or via killing it and maybe getting less, but you run less of the risk of dying yourself.
Once they do recover the stolen material from the ships scattered throughout space, they'll have to make their way past the blockade and return it to the LEO.
There will be ships flying around that you have to actually disable while trying to land, or else you could lose all of your cargo.
Either way, their goal is to land safely at the LEO with the stolen material on. And once they have that, they get to use our fancy new cargo elevator mechanic to return the stolen cargo to the station.
I love the idea that you're kind of PvE looting the goods from NPCs, and then you have a possible PvP encounter at the station. A lot of people were concerned that the event would not have a PvP side of the mission, and Ninetales kind of was a PvP mission. Elliot on Spectrum reiterated that there will be an unlawful mission for this event, or an unlawful side of the mission for the event. Next, I know, we have done this talk about cargo missions for weeks, and the next feature was about cargo missions on ISC, but just in case some of you haven't been following as much and want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, they kind of give an example of missions from start to finish.
You find a mission where a few different outposts on the surface of Hurston have mined some iron, and you've got to bring it up to Loreville, where then it can be transported further from there. So you go to each of these outposts, you land at that location, and there, in the warehouse of that outpost, those containers will be waiting for you where you can call it up through the freight elevator. You load it up into your ship, and then you figure out what the next location is, and the next location, and the next location. And you can basically do those in any order you like.
You'll have single pickup, single drop-off, so this could be picking up from the LEOs around ArtCorp, the Lagrange points, for example, and taking it to Area 18 or to Beijing Point, the station above. Then you'll have a multi-pickup and a singular drop-off. And then the opposite of that, which is singular pickup to multi-drop-off, could be the complete opposite, where you go from a Hurston DC to 2 other outposts delivering goods.
All right, we're through that, and yes, I can't wait to play these, but I get it. You're probably tired of hearing about it at this point. What none of you should be tired of hearing about is, and you probably are, unfortunately, is this.
It also lets us do a first static setup of what is being called StarSim, where we can test out the flow and then actually make the dynamic side of it work, where we can balance it based off of the needs and wants of the actual locations.
So when is this going to happen? Who knows, but a dynamic economy cannot happen without the data to input it. All this work is that data, right? More on that, Star Citizen Live, making missions 2, and one thing that was not touched on in ISC as well, I think, is, and so I kind of saved it here, is what size containers are used in these missions.
Well, you won't have to load 101 1SCU boxes. You might have to load 6 1SCU boxes. But the missions are designed so that the the amount of SCU and the size of the box is based on the ideal ship for the grade of the mission, so that you can do the mission in one run if you have the appropriately sized ship.
So the ideal ship for the grade of the mission. So you're saying that each of these missions are designed with a certain size or scope of ship in mind?
That's right.
When we go over them and we're planning out the grades and the difficulties, we will look to go, right, this one is one that we class for, say, a caterpillar. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have a caterpillar to do it. It's just kind of the grading that we do. So we'll go Caterpillar, that means this much SCU. You could do it in a Pisces if you want. It's just going to take quite a bit longer, and you might have to leave the back door of your Pisces open with a 32 SCU stuck out of it.
So first, 32 SCU containers do not fit in Caterpillars in 324, unfortunately. So you may have thought that that's what they meant by what they said here. So I have noticed missions around Caterpillar and C2 size are maximum 16 SCU because that is the box that fits well in both ships. But if you're using a C2, it's kind of 2 times as long to load because you don't get 32 SCU boxes. Later in the show, Elliot tells us they can't display what box sizes are being used in the mission description yet, but they want to, right? The answer to the next question, I feel, is obvious, but we end up getting some pretty sick information from it.
I think we talked about this on SCL. The question says, can we use our own commodities or commodities that we have found to complete these hauling missions?
No. No. Not like, so the hauling missions as they are, these are tracked contracted goods. So this company has already owned these commodities and they're asking you to transport them from A to B. However, what that open question is kind of alluding to is more resource gathering missions. So we will have missions where you are asked to just get 10 copion horns, or this refinery just wants X amount of raw iron, and the player can get them by their own means. For example, you could go mine it yourself. You could pirate it and use it for the mission and things like that. So in the future we will have missions that allow you to get the commodities via your own means.
So obviously you're working for a company. You're just a trucker moving them, but resource gathering missions are a good direction to go next. I think this is where you can start considering hoarding materials a bit and filling missions for them in kind of like when the profit is there. But to be clear, this is not something that is coming in 324. It's something that they want to work on next. They next touch on missions in general and what their place in the game is.
How we see missions is missions are, and I know people take the piss currently, but missions are meant to be more narrative-driven stories in the game. But we also use them as a vehicle to introduce players to the more emergent aspects of the world. So the hauling missions are meant to show players a connection of commodities between locations, which then, like, now they know that this place trades in iron and this place wants iron, and they can look at the commodity terminals and goes, well, that sells for this much and that buys for this much. I could actually make a profit if I ignore the mission and just do it without the mission. That's what it's there for. It's to expose a gameplay route.
So this is both believable and not. Players have solved the issue where the best profit for commodity trading is with third-party websites for years now. I see this as more getting your feet wet, or instead of filling up on crappy commodities, when your hold is full of the gold, for example, and it runs out, instead of waiting for gold to tick again, you can just take a few missions and fill up the rest of your hold from a location nearby. Also, yes, missions are meant to be narrative in MMOs, tell the story of the world they built. And they don't just do that too well yet, but they're starting to with the idea of, well, these type of places deal in these type of materials, right? They're telling a story. I asked what they're doing to make smaller ships more viable, and this is how they answered it.
You're absolutely right. Obviously, not only can you do it, but you definitely should be doing it. The question isn't so much whether you should or shouldn't be using a C2. Why would I ever use a small or a medium ship? Maybe that's all you have. Maybe you only have a small or a medium ship. Not everyone has C2s like SaltEMike. So if you only have a small or a medium ship, then we wanted to make sure that you still had access to the hauling gameplay. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that there are only so many of each type of mission in each part of space. So if you are in a very traffic part of space and there are more people who are doing hauling and they have smaller or medium ships, they may have taken all of those small and medium sized contracts. So there may be one or two you could grab, but you aren't going to be able to fill a whole C2 with them if you're in a heavily trafficked part of space where everyone else is scrabbling over those same missions. And then, of course, there are the more economy based answers. So can you make an efficient delivery route? If you have to go back and forth and back and out of atmosphere and back up again, and you have to sometimes quantum, sometimes you're using hydrogen, fuel costs alone might make it not economically viable to do 8 different small missions when you could just do 2 medium or 2 large ones.
I don't know where they thought I was coming from. I don't want to fly the big ships. I'm advocating for smaller ships being used more, but I simply asked people, who have nothing to do with ships to solve my problem, right? And that was my mistake. The answer is certainly not some people don't have big ships, so they use smaller ones in a well-designed video game, right? It's just not the answer. Hopefully, smaller ships give you an advantage of some kind, which he touches on a little bit at the end, maybe he's raising fuel prices in 324. I don't know, but that's an interesting tidbit there. The next big question from the last show was asked, what's with the low payouts?
Yeah, and I mean, on that point, to the hundreds of days point, if you were to take the numbers of the early missions, and let's say at the moment we're imagining those numbers are around the 20k per hour, for example, but like Jared says, these numbers change, and then you just did a straight times this by that, what's an 890 jump, then you're getting hundreds of days or whatever. Okay, but you're not going to be doing those missions. Yeah. Well, I mean, for starters, we're an MMO, so we're not like a 40-hour game that you finish in 3 weeks. But even so, this is not a linear scale. This is a curved scale. The whole point of it is, the further you climb up that scale, the more rapidly you accelerate, the more rapidly you make more. That's not only to reward players for their progression through the system, but it's also to account for the fact that an extremely difficult environment is going to require multiplayer. It's not going to be soloable. So it can't just be the case that I get this reward when I do an easy one and I get this reward when I do a difficult one. It needs to be one person gets this reward when they do an easy one, and 3 people get this reward when they do a hard one, split up between them, and you still progress that way. But it's not a straight line. It's quite a curve.
Now, on the contrary, I think their answer here is great. I think it's an MMO. Later in the show, they say something along the lines of grinding is good. I think that will probably rub people the wrong way. I think what they mean is meaningful progression is good. And I like that they said you'll kind of stop playing if the meaningful progression isn't there and if it ends too quickly like it does now. The issue is the only progression we really have is ships, which they raised to that MMO level of grind. And it's just kind of all weird right now, and they're figuring it all out as they go, and we're caught in the middle here, right? I love this question that Jared asks, and I love the answer even more.
Can I ask a question I kind of feel like I have to ask?
Shoot.
Why not wait until every mission has been rebalanced to do this change? Why create the inequity for any period of time?
Yeah, that is a very fair question. Because the longer we waited to put this tech into any mission, we'd basically be adding to the old way of doing things instead of a backlog, instead of moving on to the new way. So the entire mission system is being refactored now, and EVR is a part of that refactor. So new stuff is coming out with EVR. Recent stuff is being addressed. Older stuff is going to be addressed.
They want to do things right for once. Why continue to do things wrong like they've been doing for years? I really appreciate this. Unfortunately, a lot of players are a bit confused about what's going on, and that's the downside here, right? I just appreciate that they're finally focusing on this as a game in those ways, right? So that's really good. This next one from Jared, I don't like as much.
We want to try to avoid as many wipes as possible. That's always this. That's always the other thing. It's people don't want to invest time. People don't want to invest effort knowing this thing is going to wipe. It is our intention from this point forward to not wipe for anything or anything. That's not the same as saying that we're not going to. Now, I want to be real clear, because every time we say what we want to do and then something changes, people are like, CIG promised. No, we told you what we wanted to do. What we want to do from this point forward is we want to try to avoid any wipe. If we have to wipe from this point forward, it'll be something severe. It'll be something that we've all come together and said there's just no other way forward. And so that is still a possibility. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it's not. But the intention from everyone at every single level is to do every single thing we can from this point forward to avoid any more wipes.
So that all sounds like it makes sense. But just stop and think for a second. We can't even sell ships back right now. The economy team admits in this episode that their processes of rebalancing are going on, and they're ongoing, and they're not done. So what sorts of value are they getting out of this data? At some point, they need to wipe and understand economy changes that, they made when the game is kind of done. They need to know what that feels like. Now, Croncy mentioned on the podcast, check it out, Answer the Call podcast if you guys haven't yet, that he thinks that they mean that their intentions are not to be like Escape from Tarkov that wipes all the time when the game is out. Obviously, they're going to have to wipe during this period. I think you might be onto something there, but we'll have to see. So probably some lines crossed with what I assumed, but if I assume it, other people are going to assume it. So yeah, it was just maybe a little bit worded weirdly there. Quick hits. Hauling uses the same reputation that we have now, but it will change when we have the long-term rep system that they've been talking about. The service beacon system is considered fundamental, and they want to build it up at some point in the future, and I agree. It is super important, and I think it needs to be in the very near future and prioritized above many things that they've been prioritizing. I'll double down. All the work they did on the economy side of cargo missions, is the work that they need to inform for Star Sim, so remember that here. And then chaining missions is encouraged, but if you fail all those chained, the rep hit should hurt. Whew. Lots of stuff from video updates this week. I hope you got through it because we got some other updates and there's a bit there as well. All right, starting with the sneak peek. This is clearly on Pyro based on that yellow moss, but the main focus of the sneak peek is that they have some form of engineering at outposts. You can't tell from the image that it's purely art, right? Or if it's working in practice or anything like that, but there might be some kind of fun mission types and sandbox solutions to problems that players will encounter at ground missions in Pyro. For example, shutting down power at a bunker, maybe to prevent turrets from firing, things like that. Who knows, right? SQ42 Monthly report we're putting here in other updates. I think I'm going to do this from now on. Let me know what you guys think about that, because this was basically a repost from everything in the PU. Monthly report from last week. Everything else was more squadron focused and honestly not really newsworthy. So link will be in the description for that if you guys want to check it out. And then dev posts. We got some good stuff here. FPS Movement. Zach Priest is back on Spectrum to discuss things around FPS. And this time he's talking about player movement, which, if you have ever played Star Marine, is insanely broken. It's crazy. The inertia stuff is nuts. And there are inertia changes coming into 324. They do not solve everything, but they do kind of solve that side-to-side weirdness. And he wants to address hip firing meta after that, because those two things combined create a pretty bad experience to play in. Combat visors and hit markers are next, and without giving too much away, Zach tries to explain why combat visor helmets feel a little overpowered. It's simply because they're the only choice, right? When there's other choices for you to make, you may want to choose something else over a combat visor, right? And they are really, really powerful combat visors, but sounds like the other stuff's going to be pretty powerful too. Jumptown nerfs. Nico, a community manager at CIG, so don't kill the messenger on this one here, replied to some concerns about the reward around Jumptown and how it's been reduced. And yeah, they're designing these rewards for the more long term, and they're trying to move away from what he called an alpha phase economy, which I think is great. They kind of did the please play this new thing, so it pays a lot, and now they have players getting used to that, and they're taking it away. So I understand if you're upset, but again, don't kill the messenger here. They talked a lot about it on SCL, about making overall changes to the game to have meaningful progression through making money and other things. Law system changes. I think this was the best communication we had all week, and honestly, than I've seen maybe all year. Luke Presley noticed that people were confused about what last week's update meant, so he laid it all out there. Basically, armistice zones are going to be able to clean up anything that is abandoned, and they explained that abandon is when someone claims a ship, but the thing is, we can now tow ships out of armistice zone and then damage them if we need to and how we see fit. So that's pretty cool. They just have to be in that abandoned state. You can't do it to ships that are not. I can see this change at making orgs have something to do and feel like they are doing something meaningful, and I think that's really cool. We had a lore post this week, which is one of those reposted jump points from kind of years ago, probably. I don't think this implies that this ship is in production or anything. If you aren't aware of what it is, it's a repair, refuel, and rearm ship, and I can see this being a priority soon as the economy team is starting to mention fuel costs. But yeah, do you really think we're going to see this one? I don't. But that's all I got this week, guys. So quite a bit. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please leave comments and let me know what you thought. A lot of opinionated stuff there. A lot of things are changing. A lot of things are pissing people off. So let me know how you're feeling. Feeling a pretty down right now about things just kind of not moving at the pace that they should be. I remember telling people, yeah, this patch is coming like next week, and that was like a month ago. So it's yeah, this has been tough. This has been tough to play. I'm playing other games. I'm playing Death Stranding right now. Let me know what you guys are playing. You guys playing Star Citizen? You playing something else? Leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see you guys next week. Hopefully it's a better one.